Nigel Farage is considered a key figure in Brexit, but subsequently withdrew. Now he has launched his comeback on trash TV to the displeasure of the jungle camp producers. The British politician Nigel Farage achieved third place in the current season of the jungle camp, and anyone who thinks that the career of the key Brexit figure is over is mistaken. The appearance on British trash TV could catapult the ex-parliamentarian much closer to the levers of power. Farage has dictated the policies of the ruling Tory party in the background anyway, so he should rejoin it, writes a commentator at The Guardian. In 1992, he left the right-wing Tory party to found the right-wing populist party UKIP. In 2019, he was co-founder of the Brexit Party, whose chairmanship he resigned after Great Britain left the EU. And since then, Farage has not been part of parliament or government. With Brexit, he promised the population that far fewer immigrants would now come to the island. But 3 years after leaving the EU, immigration numbers in Britain are rising to a new record high, according to the National Statistics Office. Farage watched the impact of his Brexit from the sidelines and continued to rail against immigration policy. Now, however, he seems to be toying with getting back into politics, and that's why he took part in the jungle camp. The fact that Nigel Farage was taking part in the trash TV format attracted attention in Great Britain even before the start of the season. It's as if Jean-Claude Juncker as Bachelor in Thailand or Etienne Schneider on Big Brother were preparing their comeback into politics, and accordingly the British TV media discussed how TV channel ITV dealt with the politician in the show. Some claim that Farage was treated with kid gloves and that he only had to solve simple tasks in the forest of Australia's Tully and the Tully Gorge National Park, and was thus able to put himself in a good light. The ex-parliamentarian disagrees. He says the people at the top of ITV have done their best to make my life difficult. Farage is reported to have told this to the Daily Mail. It is said to have been censored and its broadcast time reduced. There have always been divisive characters in the jungle camp, but now we think people should think twice. That is what The Sun reports, citing an anonymous station insider. Politicians in particular could be denied participation in the show in the future. The hosts of the show are also in favor of this. We need a year without politicians, is what the Daily Mail quoted her as saying, and Farage used the appearance to become better known among the TikTok generation. But that doesn't mean in a million years that they will vote for him, writes the Guardian commentator. However, since the end of the show, several Tory politicians have appeared open to welcoming Farage back into the party. According to media reports, Farage received about 1.74 million euros for his participation in the jungle camp. The boxer Tony Bellew and reality TV regular Sam Thompson landed in front of Farage in the first two places in the British jungle camp, by the way. But we will have to see a lot that's coming. But I also need to mention a topic on devolution trouble most might not have ever heard about, and it has nothing to do with Farage. London is pressuring Scotland over a breach of protocol during a meeting with Turkish President Erdogan. British Foreign Secretary Cameron is threatening to withdraw support from the Scottish government even. That means that British Foreign Secretary David Cameron has threatened to withdraw cooperation from Scottish ministers after a meeting between Hamza Yousaf and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan at COP28, where no British representative was present, as the BBC reported. The absence of a British representative from the meeting is part of an ongoing dispute between Scotland and the British government over the treatment of foreign officials. Despite claims by Mr. Yousaf's spokesman that the British official had been invited, Lord Cameron, who has taken a more assertive stance than his predecessor James Cleverly, has expressed his dissatisfaction in a letter to the SNP's Angus Robertson. According to Lord Cameron, the Scottish government failed to provide sufficient advance notice to devolved government ministers, breaching FCDO support protocols for overseas visits. He warned of possible consequences, including withdrawal of FCDO support for future meetings and logistical support. This latest development represents an escalation, as Lord Cameron claims that the absence of an FCDO official undermines Britain's foreign policy, which calls for a unified voice on the world stage in turbulent times. Amid the disagreement, the First Minister's office maintains that the FCDO representative was aware of the meeting and was invited to it, highlighting the nature of fast-moving events such as the COP and dismissing any threat to curtail the Scottish Government's international engagement. Cameron warned he would take a tougher stance if there were further breaches. The meeting with Erdogan violated protocol because the British government was not sufficiently informed. The United Kingdom had already made similar allegations in the summer when Yusuf met with Icelandic Prime Minister Katrín Jakobsdóttir. And Yusuf dismissed Cameron's threats and stressed Scotland's value in international affairs. Yusuf criticized the British approach even. Instead of criticizing publicly, Cameron could have spoken confidentially to the Scottish government. The threat to restrict this international engagement of the elected Scottish government by an unelected lord, you know who he means, I think that is misguided and petty, the Scottish said. Yusuf had already sharply criticized Britain's unreserved support for Israel in the past. The Scottish politician's in-laws were stuck in Gaza for around a month before being evacuated to Scotland. In Scotland, the British government's reluctance to meet or speak to Yusuf at the time, despite the Israeli bombings, was heavily criticized. Although the Scottish government has a stance there I don't share. But there's also a big change coming for Wales as well. The Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford has announced his resignation after 5 years in office. When I stood for election as leader of the Welsh Labour Party, I said I would stand down during the current term of the Senate. That's what Drakeford wrote on Wednesday on the online service X, that's the one formerly Twitter. The Senate is the Welsh Parliament, and he now says that time has now come. He assumes that his successor will be appointed by the party before Easter, and Drakeford said he would remain in office until then. Drakeford became head of the Welsh government in 2018. His term of office was marked by the effects of the austerity policies of the Conservative government in London, Britain's withdrawal from the EU, and the COVID pandemic. The Welsh government is responsible for areas such as health, education, and transport. The resignation continues a series of changes at the top of governments in the UK. There were 4 different British prime ministers during Drakeford's time in office. And in February, the then Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon announced her resignation. And Northern Ireland has not had a functioning government since February 2022 due to a political deadlock and a blockade by the DUP. And if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.